Today on the IERLab Podcast, we dive into the world of child social media influencers in Taiwan, from the opportunities they gain in creativity and communication to the risks they face, including privacy concerns, performance pressure, and the gaps in legal protections. Join us as we unpack the complexities behind these young online stars and what it means for society, parents, and of course, in this, a very important part of it is policy making as well. Now, I'm your host, Walter Lee, and today I'm very lucky to be joined by Yavor Kostadinov, who wrote a piece on the price of virality and the imperative for self-regulation of child social media influencers in Taiwan. Welcome to the show, Yavor.
Thank you, Walter. Happy to talk with you about this pressing and important issue. I believe not only in Taiwan, but around the world.
Yes. I think though your study was in Taiwan, I'm sure it can relate to many other countries as well. Now, but I want to specifically, I get to talk to many people recently in this season from different backgrounds, and Taiwan is an interesting one for me. So I'm going to start off with something easy, which is Taiwan unique regarding audience attention for child influencers specifically, and what kind of content is most consumed?
I think the answer is yes and no. Unique due to the context and the specific case of Taiwan. Taiwan is one of the leading democracies in Asia, which necessitates transparency and freedom of speech. So people enjoy pretty good freedoms here. So obviously that will make it a bit harder to implement all kind of laws restricting expression. On the other hand, we have as well a lot of disinformation coming from mainland China. So there is a unsettled conflict, obviously, and this makes a lot of the resources that we have go to that direction to counter those. So this is unique as well. Media literacy. Taiwan has been one of the leaders in Asia in terms of media literacy. There was a white paper in 2002, and thereafter we saw this web amended a couple of years ago to include a digital space more to update it and include the digital developments. And then Taiwan, I believe, is one of the first also in Asia to include media literacy in curricular, in the schools, in high schools, because today we're going to talk about child social media influencer. And then that is also important. So as a whole, the society is pretty aware because they're, as I mentioned, at the forefront of digital warfare, but as well because the government spent a lot of efforts towards educating the society to keep them, I would say, relatively better equipped comparatively to other countries. So on top of that, we have a very high internet penetration, and particularly towards social media. There's increase of consuming by children. Obviously, today the talk will be more towards children as creators of digital content, but primarily because there has been increase in digital presence, so there's the demand for them. So obviously, then that is another reason why we have also higher desire among the youth to become digital influencers. In one of the surveys, I think here in East Asia, also in Japan, if I'm not mistaken, children now show a great interest. One of the top 3 professions they choose is to be social media influencers, right? So obviously, incentives like financial and others are a big factor as to why this is happening. But in Taiwan, a survey shows that children actually are more motivated by the fact of self-expression and also the opportunity to develop particular skills that are sought after among the youth nowadays. This makes it a bit, probably a little bit, sets it as a unique case aside of other environments. But we also need to mention the constraints towards regulation that is also unique, and not only for Taiwan, but for East Asia, where Confucianist culture is predominant, because that makes it the norms and the appropriateness towards the family and the relationships within those then are set in a different way. We know that in Confucian families, for example, the authority, parental authority, then would be different than in other cultures, and that will affect, as in the case of Taiwan, then the control, autonomy, as we call it, a paradox within the family. And obviously the demographic trends, but again, this is not, the last two reasons are not really unique to Taiwan. Pretty much for developed societies, also in Japan, South Korea, Hong Kong, we observe steep decline of birth, and the birth rate is really going in a down spiral. So
Right,
we have less children. So that is another reason maybe why governments would be more reluctant to impose stricter regulations on how parents can control their children or what they should do with them. All right, so this is pretty much what sets the case as unique, but at the same time, it is not unique because these three paradoxes that the theory informs are also vivid. In Taiwan, we have cases of play. The first paradox, obviously, the play and work. Where does work start? Where does it stop? And then when is it fun and play for the child? So this is really difficult to dissect, especially when one of the parents or both drop their original jobs to support the influencer. And then that makes, after that, the second paradox more vivid, which is the dynamic between authority and control, autonomy and control. So this is also evident in Taiwanese cases. In my paper, you can see two of the most prominent cases, and in both cases we have actually society pointing out that the parents are just using their children, so to say, for making money, which could lead, which is a slippery slope, could lead to exploitation of the child and severe impact on the holistic development.
right.
And then the third paradox is towards popularity, and then we have the privacy. So the more popularity you have, they're connected, right? The more popularity you have, the less privacy, and vice versa. You need the popularity to gain more popularity in order to monetize your appearances. So how popular would you like your child to be, so that it doesn't get to so that their privacy doesn't get infringed on too much. So that is the third one. And in Taiwan, there is legal things, but the development of the laws are not there yet, not there in that respect, towards protecting particularly social media content creators. Now, in terms of what kind of content do they create, and it is consumed among the young in Taiwan, I think this is not unique to, especially some of the first influencers and the most popular, they actually tried to imitate online social media influencers that were famous worldwide or in other countries. So usually they'd go for toy unboxing. They would also go for fun family entertainment. As I said, the culture is pretty much family oriented. But the difference between family vlogs and child social media influencers is the centrality of the child, where in most of the, let's say 70-80% of the content, the child is the central figure in those. And the whole skits and the plays are organized around the child. So in these, again, the idea is to put the child in situations where, and to observe how the child react. And now some of these can be emotionally demanding for the child, and that's why people like it when a child reacts emotionally, and that results in higher engagement, audience engagement, and higher ratings and rank clicks, and then
Hmm.
and feedback. But then the child's emotional maybe could become emotionally unbalanced, so and exploited for its emotions, basically, right? So
Right.
I think that is a danger there, that might not be very overlooked by some parents. Um, and then it is usually for fun and entertainment.
Right.
So that is the most consumed content. Obviously, there's others, game around games and around do-it-yourself kits and so on.
Right. 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 Now, one thing I have been able to ask many people during this my time on season three is sort of to talk about the lack of clear laws for child influences, and every researcher, every professor, or whoever it may be, has their own interpretation of what they should do. It's basically somewhat similar, but like some people have different ideas as well. But in your case, how can we ensure children's rights and safety are protected without limiting their creativity or family decisions? And does being in Taiwan actually change certain things as well?
Yeah, well, this is a complicated question, a bit hard to answer, right? But we can try to elaborate a little bit. On one hand, the regulations there for consumers, for child consumers, Taiwan has been doing updating and doing a lot on that front. But when it comes to the creators, this child social media influencers, I have to also join the chorus of people that are concerned, because
Right.
there is pretty much nothing out there in the existing laws. So they definitely need to be updated. And one thing that can be done, the first update could occur in Taiwan. The law actually does include children for purposes of entertainment,
Hmm.
because the labor law on the fifth allows only 15 and 16 years old, and there is also consent by the parents. So the law is pretty detailed, and there is a cases of exception for children to participate in projects, or in the film industry, for instance, in entertainment industries. So uh, it is clear about that, but there is absolutely nothing about the virtual space and online content. And um, so I think that needs to be updated and could be updated to create a better accountability towards what exactly is online work,
Hmm.
and when the children are the creators. So this is definitely something that Taiwan can do
Hmm.
to make it better, especially for the work-play paradox, right? For that tension to be lowered there. And then also this will also lead to maybe there has been, in Taiwan, there has been a law proposed for the third one, for the privacy and popularity tensions. There has been a law that tries to protect minors of all, both consumers and creators, but it is stalled for a while in the legislative, because there are details that they really need to work on. As the age, it says 12. Why exactly have they decided on 12 instead of let's say other countries 15,
Hmm.
16, right? So why 12? Also, they don't specify particularly, let's say, gatekeepers or tech companies that are non-profit, or any other organizations. They only focus on the private sector, how they deal with the data collected from children. So there is a lot of details that are pointed out as to why this law or draft law has not been successful to pass. And I
Hmm.
agree that it can be refined, that there is a lot more detail, especially towards identifying the children as consumers and creators, and maybe have a more detailed explanation as to how both can be regulated, especially what tech companies can do as gatekeepers to then maybe flag some content, or how they deal then more appropriately with that. Not only because in the law we have content for consumers that it is, let's say, situations when the law is harmful, explicit for children and dangerous, but then we have very little about when a child just can be exploited for their work if the content is not harmful, but yet the child is still exploited, right? So we have very little on that. So that and then especially also how in terms of privacy, how then consent is given by the parents. In these cases, it's pretty unspecified, right? So this could definitely be maybe worked on. However, the middle one towards autonomy of the child versus control in the family, I think that is something that probably very little progress can be done in terms of on the legal aspect. Now, then we have on the other hand, then there's you know, we have on the ground when we look at the Taiwan context, we also have as consumers, we have pretty good protections here, and also we have, as I said, a lot of freedoms of right and expressions. Maybe the desire is not there because we want to be a little bit different here than mainland China. As I said, that this impacts, because it's specific for the context, it impacts us. China introduced, you might know that China introduced a law to a curfew, if you want, since 2021, to stop the use of minors of the internet after 10, I believe, at night to 6 in the morning. And then during the day, particular age groups have also time limitations. So I think that the government here would probably like to distance itself in that respect, maybe to have more freedoms in the family rather than telling them what to do. So maybe that is another reason that politics are a little bit different, right? So
you say that Taiwan has this freedom. What kind of freedom do you think it is compared to, let's just say, other East Asian countries, or is it mainly when you're comparing it to China itself?
no, if you look in the rankings, the Reporters Without Borders, for instance, Taiwan is #1 in all of Asia in terms of the freedom of the media and the press, transparency. If you look at the democracy indexes and the human freedoms rights and Freedom House, and they have trackers, all these NGOs, right? So if you look at all these trackers, you see that Taiwan is ranked in the top 30 in the world, which is for Asia is pretty advanced, I would say. If not at all of them at #1, I think in terms of, I'm pretty sure that in terms of freedom of the media and freedom of democracy as a whole, it's leading in Asia. So I think they would like to maintain that status as citizens here enjoy more freedoms and rights. So I think that is definitely something that shapes also this issue. But on the other hand, there is no much desire to politicize children human rights in general. Not just for this particular issue for child social media influencers, but in general, children human rights. As I said, there has been a lot done for the consumer part, but there's little desire by the political parties to politicize that. For instance, there's a debate before after elections. The government has done some efforts to spread or to make the audience aware. There was a 6-hour-long program on a public TV broadcaster that invited 36 participants from across the island, from all vested kind of stakeholders, parents, social media child influencers. Then there were also government experts or policy experts, and business. So they invited them all and created this kind of live TV show program. And then they wanted to spread awareness and also to see how people would respond to. So that also demonstrated that illustrated that basically there is a pretty much divergence within the society itself as to how much control there should be in the family, or how much freedom children should have in this, or say should have in terms of what goes online or not, when let's say parents take picture of them and then share it, for instance, or when a child social media influencer would like to continue or stop or work harder or less, then would the parents allow more engagement or less? And also a lot on how should a child review some of the feedback given to their performance online or no. So there was pretty much a lot on that. And basically they couldn't agree. Quite often there was the divergence among the people themselves, the different stakeholders, basically, right?
Right, right.
So yeah, that is another thing that obstructs, obviously, development of solid law, the lack of consensus, and yeah. So the balancing act that is needed, obviously, to achieve then, since there is no concrete agreement among all stakeholders, and then there has to be some kind of balancing act to move forward, since there's no clear regulation. And although in some respect there could be progress more, for instance, clearer labor standards and for the online children creators, then for some aspects, like the autonomy and control within the family, I think there is a difficult. It's a harder to reach a balance or to reach a agreement as to how to proceed, right?
Right, right, right. Let's kind of like stick on to this this control and also exploitation and privacy breaches. Now, within East Asia or Southeast Asia, well, from my experience anyway, it could also be, around the globe as well. There, there is, because you talked about Confucianism, it's all about hierarchy when it comes to family members, right? So obviously the younger respect the older, and the older basically are in command at this point. In a culture that values parental authority and family hierarchy, like Taiwan, like South Korea, like Japan, I'm going to change this question up a little bit. Are you seeing a lot of studies where there is exploitation, where there is privacy breaches on a certain level of where it's very obvious that it's more of the parents, let's say, influence on the children rather than the children want to do it themselves?
There haven't been horrific cases of abuse or of exploitation. We hear sometimes from the West more about these stories. Here in Taiwan, there could be two reasons why we haven't experienced that. One could be the wider awareness, as I said, there's effort made to educate more the people. We are at the forefront of this kind of disinformations and all kind of attacks. So basically, there's a lot of participation, engagement by the wider society. And as I said, the first criticism, one of the first prominent cases is Nyono's case and Tao Gui's case. When they started becoming very popular online, there was a criticism directly from the population. So we have what we call social responsible actors that kind of voice their concerns right away. And that's why there was a lot of criticism directly towards the parents as to how they handle their children, and that they're trying to monetize them and to exploit them. One of the fathers went then during a press conference to say that they're doing that just to kind of keep historical evidence for their child as a memory, that they don't intend to monetize it, but obviously there's some evidence that there have been some.
Yeah.
But again, they're trying to explain themselves so to social actors, not particularly government or the journalist, or though the journalists have done also their job. They'll have interviews with them, try to find out what's happening and if there is really room for concern. So Taiwan is not immune, however. As I also wrote in my article, it is a slippery slope. Once you start supporting your child, monetizing, then you yourself become more dependent. If you drop your job to help your child, then that could lead to that dependence on the child's performance. for the whole family, and then the child becomes more and more vulnerable. And although you might be aware that that might not be very well, very good for the holistic development of your child, you might not be having any more choice to quickly go back to different arrangements. So that is still a concern. Now, why this might be a little bit different as well is, as you mentioned, the familial relation, Confucian culture and the familial relations are different. We have the concept of filial piety. We also have, which means that the parents have obligation to take care of the children, and then the children later on have obligation to take care of their parents. This is, by the way, enshrined in the civil code and in laws. So it is not just normative or cultural thing. It is actually also in the code. So this determines and provides an environment in which not just parents, but particularly the father is seen as a handler of the financial status or financial well-being of the family. That is one of the centrality of the father figure and their role. And then the role with the children, obviously, if it is a firstborn son and another type of children. And so this is all very important, particularly the relations, not as much as who is who, but the relations themselves. So I think there is a very strong reluctance by the government to interfere in how these are governed, these relations among family members. Obviously, in severe cases of neglect, the government would interfere. But even then, probably the more often situation has been here in Taiwan to use mediators rather than courts. So the cases are not as vivid and not as obvious because the concept of saving face as well is there. People don't want to have too much popularity if you're one of these cases. So quite often they are solved by mediations to preserve, if it is, I mean, when it comes to the parental authority and child's autonomy cases, if there is issue, I believe that most of them are similarly solved. Let's say if there is a child abuse in the family, these cases are quite often, more often than not solved via mediators rather than visible court rulings.
Right.
So I think that is important to note as to why there's no very vivid laws, as in France, for instance, where the child's income then is protected now, right? Since a couple of years ago, when I think France was the first country to provide this kind of law for children to have some income, I believe 10% was it, to have for after they turn 18. I don't think that this is something that Taiwan will be moving to do because of, as I explained, because of the role of the father and in general of the parents. In the Taiwanese culture, they're considered until the children grow, that they're considered the sole figure, manager, if you want, of the financial aspect. So basically, that is the difference as to why this will not happen. Though also in the United States, in some states, they also have this kind of, because they had these cases where parents would mismanage the income, right? Even for very case in focus comes was Britney Spears, even these kind of celebrities, not just in the online social media influencer, but even before that.
Yeah.
And there's also historical other cases that were very obvious. So this makes then this is the difference between cultural differences and how that is not going to happen here, in my opinion. But then what can we do to still provide some protection or something? I think that it should be a multi-stakeholder approach, which has been also emphasized by the Child Welfare Foundation, League Foundation here in Taiwan, where maybe different focus groups should be more focus groups should organized to find a solution. But what I think it is important to do besides working with our stakeholders to find a solution is to also push for individually by these stakeholders power that they have, like government, tech, the parents. That they should try to individually also work towards a better environment, whatever they can do. One thing the government can do is definitely update the labor law to include the online aspect, and also to provide explicitly some guidelines for child social media content creators.
Hmm.
Then the second thing that tech giants can do, obviously, they carry some of the responsibilities. What content goes there? If they experience, one thing that I suggest is to observe for fatigue in the children, and then this
Hmm.
could be maybe just flagged and or proposed to the government to maybe investigate or to check on that child's welfare, because that could be observed by the frequency and the length of the content uploaded. They could request that videos or materials that involve children that upload have a timestamp as to when they're created. And if, let's say, a child has been creating content within a day for more than a particular number of hours, that could be considered a no longer a play and harmful for the development, the holistic development of the child. If it's, let's say, above certain hours or certain time, as well. The frequency could be also monitored, how often children create content, and then that could be also then evaluated as to how long. And then tech giants can then signal that that is abused, and then there could be some kind of discussion with the parents as to how to proceed. I think something like that, this kind of framework could be worked among, and then parents could also take part in these discussions to say as to how long that should be, especially if they also depend on the child as a social media influencer for survival or for their income. So they could work together to arrange a framework as to how to protect these content creators. The child should probably also have a say, because, for instance, in Gloria Ñoño's case, when the parents asked her, she actually said that she enjoys the activities and she's not tired, and she really wants to continue doing that, and she has been doing it for a decade now, I believe about a decade. So I think then children should be also asked, and I think that there could be some kind of arrangement for these actors to be protected by everybody, and then that could make everybody at ease as to how things work with a clear guidelines. So I think there could be a little bit more effort. It's obviously very difficult to balance, as I said, because there's no agreement sometimes among different actors, especially even among the wider civil society. But I think that something could be a little bit more detailed, and that could maybe make things calmer and easier to navigate.
Yeah, I really do agree with your time and frequency there. That's something that I think would be quite a good way to balance out, what we say, like the difference between, play and making content and making feel like it. What's the difference, for example, but also asking the child as well. Like, there might be situations where all the child needs to do is create the video, and everything that goes behind the scenes, like the editing, the whatever, might be distributed to outsourcing, or where maybe it's not as labor intensive towards the child. But yes, the frequency of which, videos are pumped out is very difficult for well, for creators in general, not just child creators, for creators in general. You hear about this burnout situation, and the last thing obviously we want for children to do is experience burnout. You're not supposed to experience that until at least you're in, your adult years. But Yavor, this has been a fantastic and very insightful talk into the Taiwanese area. I really hope that we get another chance to actually talk more, and I'm sure that there is many more questions I could ask. But for the time being, do you have anything to promote, or like something that you're working on, or future studies that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, a couple of things. The first thing is the introduction of new tech that actually I believe will make things even worse for, on one hand, there will be some benefits, but on the other, there will be a worsening condition for consumers, particularly, if not for creators. And that is the AI dimension,
Mm.
right? That we didn't touch upon. And that is something that I'm interested to look into further because AI creates a second layer, what we call, and second algorithms, more algorithms. And we know that these algorithms are actually the problem in terms of consumption because they make children addicted, number one. Number two, after children are so addicted, that's why, Australia and others, Denmark, are moving to ban social media
Mm.
because it is pretty much hard for children to control themselves. And even my students that are already adults, when they come in my classroom, they can't just get their handphones out of their hands.
Mm.
So that is very detrimental, I believe. So AI makes that actually exacerbates the problem. So on one hand, for children, social media children creators, content creators, they could AI could just use they could create their avatars and then disseminate information. So that could maybe lessen the fatigue and provide them another venue for the parents to instead of film their child, they could just use their avatar and do so the parents can work harder instead of the child. So
Right.
that could be if it is implemented and if parents educated and literate enough to know how to use AI to basically help their child so
Mm.
that the child has more time for play rather than work, right? So that will
Mm.
be something positive. But on the other hand, if misused, actually, that could be detrimental to the consumers because then there will be a second layer of hallucination, and then because that's what AI does, spreads also
Mm.
information that might not be accurate. That might erode the image of the social media content creator. Then they might suffer from the popularity might drop. They might suffer from this kind of dynamics. This could create also tension. The income might drop. So there will be definitely new issues related to what we are seeing now and the role of AI. That is something to be what we call the future research, in my opinion, in that direction as to how the new tech and media developments, especially AI, can then help and hurt children's social media influencers, right? Another thing is I'm looking at is because nowadays we're moving to creating content that is particularly short in nature with a format that we'll call the short video formats, right?
Mm.
Like Reels or uh, uh, all kind of they're called only in two platforms Reels, but in other platforms they have different names. But this new the short formats, I believe that particularly in my research, I'm exploring now their role in diplomacy, but I think that the format itself will have also impact on child social media influencers in a sense that they'll have to adapt. And some of them would start doing that because it is just more effective as there's already research in marketing
Mm.
and from other fields that actually this kind of short form videos, that's why TikTok is so successful as a platform, right?
Mm.
Um, though that is another thing that in Taiwan is banned at a government level, but um, among the people, among the consumers, it is still available, and that is very impactful. It has way more stronger impact. So I think future research I'm looking at is to look at different type of media and different type of content as to how that will then either create more problems for AI child social media influencers and more opportunities for them to lessen some of the tensions that we mentioned. Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, no, thank you. And definitely, one thing we haven't touched upon on the IER Lab podcast is more on the AI and how it's going to affect, well, it's already affecting social media as we speak. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous how realistic it is now, and like the AI slop that does come through my feeds anyway is quite annoying. I don't like it at all, but it's also another reason why I stopped as a content creator. AI, I just don't know what to do with it at the moment. I don't know where it's going to go. It's going to be an interesting couple of years to see how creators use AI to create their content, and maybe it's not the way we think. Maybe it is going to be completely different, but for me, it doesn't look good. But I'd like to thank everyone for listening to today's episode of IERLab Podcast. And once again, I'd love to thank our guest, Yavor.
My pleasure.
Yes, and then until next time, this has been Walter Lee, and you may click on your next adventure now.